People will say, where do you get your ideas? I don't know where I get them. You know, and if I did, man, would I tell you?
A lot of times when people come to see me, they want to see if I'm really f***ed up.
For me, the fun of writing novels isn't in the finished product.
Because I do it for free if I couldn't do it for money, but I love doing it for money.
What's up, guys? This is Josh with the very first episode of WriteRightRite's mini-series, What Blank Can Teach Us About Writing. In this case, Stephen King. A quick thanks to you guys. I make these videos and they are a lot of fun, but most of all, they're for you. Likes, comments, and subscribes, they really do help a lot, and I don't want to make light of that. But I'm mostly interested in your feedback. What do you think of this new series? What writers do you want to learn from? And if you just want to drop in and say hi, I'd love that too. Anyway, let's go ahead and jump straight into it. Alright, so the first thing I've got from Stephen King is this quote. He says, "I've written because it fulfilled me. Maybe it paid off the mortgage on the house and got the kids through college, but those things were on the side. I did it for the buzz. I did it for the pure joy of the thing. And if you can do it for joy, you can do it forever." Behind the success of great entrepreneurs, business moguls, and literary geniuses is an underlying trend. They all love what they do. It completes them in a way and fulfills them. All the other advantages they get from their craft, including profit, are just pleasant bonuses. Which ushers us straight into our next piece of advice. Writing isn't completely about making money. Stephen King said, writing isn't about making money, getting famous, getting dates, getting laid, or making friends. In the end, it's about enriching the lives of those who will read your work and enriching your own life as well. It reminds me of what Zig Ziglar once said. You can have everything you want in life if you help enough other people get what they want. Writing is about helping others just as much as it's about helping yourself. If you want to write better, capture the hearts of more people. Ask yourself, what can I offer my readers today that'll truly enrich their lives? Stephen King said, you can't please all of the readers all of the time. You can't please even some of the readers all of the time. But you really ought to try to please at least some of the readers some of the time. He also says, if you intend to write as truthfully as you can, your days as a member of polite society are numbered anyway. And also, when you write a story, you're telling yourself the story. So basically, write for yourself first. If we combine these tips, we get something like this. Write for yourself first and foremost, and write as truthfully as possible. Then, try to please at least some of the readers some of the time. This next piece of advice embraces the inner neurotic every writer seems to have. You can approach the act of writing with nervousness, excitement, hopefulness, or even despair. The sense that you can never completely put on the page what's in your mind and heart. You can come to the act with your fists clenched and your eyes narrowed, ready to kick ass and take down names. You can come to it because you want a girl to marry you, or because you want to change the world. Come to it any way but lightly. Let me say that again. You must not come lightly to the blank page. So, I love this advice because it helps you give yourself permission to write freely and fully despite your emotional state. Sometimes I feel like I avoid writing when I'm sad or angry because I feel like those emotions may in some way flaw my writing, when in fact the opposite may be true. Channel all of your emotions into your writing and see what happens. Interestingly enough, King also said, I'm convinced that fear is at the root of most bad writing. So be aware of that truth and consider this. I stopped calling the initial pang of fear, fear, because I think the first stage of anxiety, angst, surprise, or whatever shape it takes begins as a neutral, if not beneficial thing. I started calling it adrenaline instead, because I found that you can channel these seemingly negative emotions into your work in an extraordinarily powerful way. Whereas if you call that initial jolt of adrenaline fear, you'll believe that it is fear, and you'll treat it as such, and inevitably, it'll become the fear you so desperately want to avoid. That fear that King's talking about when he says that fear is at the root of most bad writing. So instead, treat that initial pang of adrenaline as an indicator and a driver. It's making you aware of a problem. Say that you haven't written enough, for example, and it sticks around to be used as a motivator, a driver of your actions, if you let it. And perhaps most importantly, approach this task of writing with the passion, love, and even respect that our ancient 46th century old art form deserves. When you think of it that way, It makes you feel like you're a part of something much bigger than yourself, something ancient, powerful, and truly great. Speaking of the vast, infinite, and even telepathic nature of writing, King says, all the arts depend upon telepathy to some degree. But I believe that writing is the purest distillation. Our craft as writers isn't just vomiting chunks of words onto a page. It's transferring, sometimes like Stephen King says, telepathically, the ideas that enrich, create, and inspire, from our minds to their minds. He balances that idea with this. This isn't the Ouija board or the spirit world we're talking about here, but just another job like laying pipe or driving long-haul trucks. King dives further into the idea with this statement. I remember an immense feeling of possibility at the idea, as if I had been ushered into a vast building with closed doors and had been given leave to open any I liked. There were more doors than one person could ever open in a lifetime, I thought, and still think. And to put all that deep stuff into a single sentence, writing is refined thinking. Alright, if you're just starting out as a writer, here's some advice from King that I think will help you out a lot. He says, if you're just starting out as a writer, you could do worse than strip your television's electric plug wire, wrap a spike around it, and then stick it back into the wall. See what blows and how far. I think what he's trying to say there is to eliminate distraction. He also says there should be no telephone in your writing room. Certainly no TV or video games for you to fool around with. For my generation, and probably a lot of you too, I'd say that includes iPhones, tablets, text messaging, YouTube, social media, email, and a lot of other things too. He also says, if you want to be a writer, you must do two things above all others. Read a lot and write a lot. This is his advice on becoming a writer, or the best writer you can be. If you don't have time to read, you don't have the time or the tools to write. So this is how you become a writer. You read, and you write a lot. You learn best by reading a lot and writing a lot, and the most valuable lessons of all are the ones you teach yourself. What does that mean, though? Write a lot. Well, if you're Stephen King, that means at least 2,000 words per day. And what about to read a lot? King reads 70 to 80 books per year, or roughly 20 to 22% of a book each day on average. He says, I'm a slow reader, but I usually get through 70 or 80 books a year, mostly fiction. I don't read in order to study the craft. I read because I like to read. Now here's an interesting one to wrap your mind around. King says, put your desk in the corner, and every time you sit down there to write, remind yourself why it isn't in the middle of the room. Life isn't a support system for art. It's the other way around. He also says, paragraphs are almost always as important for how they look as for what they say. They are maps of intent. This next piece of advice is one of my favorites. He says, write with the door closed and rewrite with the door open. I think what that means is if you're ever writing and you get stuck, you're starting to get that writer's block or whatever it is, write as if no one's going to read it, at least at first. Just get your thoughts out there, and that's the first stage. The second is to basically open the door to the rest of the world by considering how your readers are going to respond to your work and adjusting as needed. One of the ways to do this is to ask yourself what questions your reader is going to ask about this and how you can answer them, almost like you're reading their mind. King says, we need to experience the mediocre and the outright rotten. Such experience helps us to recognize those things when they begin to creep into our own work and then steer clear of them. As a writer, you've probably already found yourself listening to the dialogue in your favorite TV shows from a screenwriter's perspective, noting the subtle or not so subtle injections of humor, premonition, timing, character development, so on and so forth. Be okay with critiquing the writing, whether it's the screenwriting from your favorite show or a classic from Orwell or Fitzgerald. And that's the perfect segue into our next tip. We've all heard someone say, man, it was so great, or so horrible, or strange, funny. I just can't describe it. If you want to be a successful writer, you must be able to describe it, and in a way that will cause your reader to prickle with recognition. The more you're able to describe the intimate details, the sentence-by-sentence tactics to the grand strategies of the plot, the story arc, themes, and symbolism weaved into the fabric of the story, the more you'll understand the writing process, and the better you'll write. He also says, while it's impossible to make a competent writer out of a bad writer, and while it is equally impossible to make a great writer out of a good one, it is possible, with lots of hard work, dedication, and timely help, to make a good writer out of a merely competent one. And here's the last piece of advice I'm going to leave you with. You undoubtedly have your own thoughts, interests, and concerns, and they have arisen, as mine have, from your experiences and adventures as a human being. You should use them in your work. Alright guys, that's all I got for you today. Thank you so much for your support as always. If you like this video, subscribe and like. Keep in mind that your comments, likes, and subs keep this channel going and help me post more frequently too as I prioritize my work. Anyway, thank you so much again, and I will see you in the next one.
How many times in your life have you eaten eggs? But there's always a new way to fix eggs.
A writer's notebook is the best way in the world to immortalize bad ideas.
You get thousands of rejection slips before you break through. You kind of get used to that.
I usually finish a book and say, geez, I don't want to say goodbye to these people.